that in some portions of our region. But at least for now, we are not really going to be starving for rain. We'll have some sources that will provide more rain for us on top of what we've already had. One of those sources from the tropics, Tropical Depression 13, it's been talked about. It's been tracked as a wave for several days now, and still in at least a gradual strengthening mode based on the current expectations and the forecast analysis. So it's still moving to the west to northwest. It will have some impact near Puerto Rico, perhaps Hispaniola, Turks and Caicos and thereabouts. And then perhaps by the weekend, early next week, we'll have a clearer picture of precisely what it's going to do as far as its impacts in Florida and the eastern Gulf. Right now, there's the forecast for it to be a low-end Category 1 hurricane. But hurricane projections and intensification forecasts often do change, especially considering the waters are quite warm. Remember Isaias, it helped to at least take away some of the heat that's contained in those surface waters, but still in the mid-80s. That's well enough for a thunder or a hurricane or a tropical storm to thrive. But there are going to be some obstacles, one of which being a bit of dry air, not massively dry, but enough to maybe hinder its strengthening mode and keeping it on a slower pace. Another thing that could work perhaps in its favor is decreasing shear. These red zones indicate where the upper winds are forecast to be lighter, and usually with a light wind shear you can have a strengthening mode with tropical systems. So as it's projected to move into this region by Saturday, Sunday, there won't be much of that shear to kind of rip apart the structure. So that's why there is that trend of slow intensification. And what's steering it is this strong high pressure area over the Atlantic, which extends its way towards the U.S. East Coast. Now that's going to be a big factor as far as if and when it's going to turn to the north. If this ridge stays fairly strong where it is through the weekend and early next week, it would take more of a west-northwest track and maybe more so into the Gulf. A weaker ridge, if this kind of retreats, then it will take that north turn earlier, which means a greater threat for Florida. It's really tough to determine because the forecast data are really all over the place with relation to that ridge, and of course with the overall possible movement, which is still projected across the northern Caribbean or the westernmost Atlantic and the Bahamas and thereabouts. But with an increase in strength, especially if the system avoids the islands of the Greater Antilles, it can be a stronger tropical storm or a hurricane. So the bottom line is, I do think it's reasonable to expect some moisture to come into the Gulf region, but other forces, as far as its impacts on our region, just cannot be exactly determined because it's just too early. There's going to be more data to process in the next several days, and as I said, we'll have a clearer picture. But it's not the only player in the tropics. We have Tropical Depression 14 in the Caribbean, which will move more towards Mexico and then perhaps into the eastern Gulf by about the same time frame. So there's a possibility Monday, Tuesday, we'll have two different systems, tropical systems in the Gulf region, but this one will have more of a westward track away from us. The rain around here, kind of heavy and spotty, especially